Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the weekly meeting right before the long weekend. I'm sure we're all excited. Um, Kick us off. We have no new members to announce for this week. So with that said, I'd like to pass it over to Jenny with Vivid Machines. Jenny, if you wouldn't mind giving a little introduction about yourself, and we'd love to hear your presentation.
Nice. I'll do both at once. So I'm going to share my screen and just make sure everybody can see it, except for, are you guys seeing hang on, let's see what version.
We're seeing your view of the presentation mode.
Just, I think it's because I had two screens plugged in. Let's try that again. Is that better?
Yep, you got it.
Nice. So for everybody who doesn't know me, I'm Jenny. I'm the co-founder and CEO at a company called Vivid Machines. And we've been around 3.5 years, and we're doing some collaborations with some of the people on the call today, which we're really excited about. And I'll talk a little bit about what we do. Actually, I'll just jump into the agenda. So I'll talk about who we are and what we do. And then I thought I'd talk about some of our interesting projects and then a bit about our journey to date building a computer vision company in ag in Canada. So, so a bit about us. As most of you know, profitability in specialty crops is hard. And that is really the problem that we're focused on today is how do we make that a bit easier and things a bit more profitable. So one of the things is, if precision. So how do we better understand what's happening on a per plant basis? I mean, the reality is we're probably not going to take any actions per plant at this time, but having that as the data set underneath so that we can aggregate it in different ways and provide various predictions is really what we're focused on as a company. So the problem is there hasn't been great data. So building any kind of applications for specialty crops has so far led to mediocre results. So I'm going to talk a little bit about computer vision, which is what we do. So if you think of things like Chat GPT, which are large language models that were trained using essentially the entire internet. The problem with our space is that when you Google things like apple trees or, various whatever crop it is, the images on the internet are not what it really looks like in commercial settings. So when you train machine learning or computer vision models, they don't perform as well because they're not looking at the right type of data. So what we built is this equipment mounted camera. So we developed this multispectral camera that can mount onto tractors, ATVs, golf carts, and it captures data, video data of every single plant while running at tractor speeds. It geotags those plants so it can locate them and then ties predictions to them. And one of the things that we've worked really, really hard on doing is taking these algorithms that can do these predictions and transforming them so they can run on the camera on the edge for a couple of reasons. One is because there's so much data that you need. Like we're driving through farms at 7 kilometers an hour, taking video, so running predictions and all of that. It's not something that you can easily stream to the cloud. And also, connectivity on a lot of farms is still difficult. So we run everything on the edge, meaning on the camera. And it also gives us the ability to predict for plants in real time. So today we have a data set of over 200 million images. We have cameras from coast to coast in North America, in Spain, and in New Zealand, where we're working mostly with apple growers so far, where they are collecting this data, and I'll talk a bit about it, and using it for crop load management and yield prediction. So here's what our data looks like. So a couple examples, one in apples, the other in pomegranates. But we are a multispectral system, so we can see into the near infrared, and we also have a telephoto lens. So that means that, we can discover and see things that you might not normally see with a regular camera. And we're seeing things as they appear in commercial settings. And I'm happy to talk at the end about some of the challenges with how building models like this for farms, when every single farm, as you guys know, is different. So, you really need a lot of data to train a model to understand what's happening, because every place is so different. And that's the unique challenge, I think, in specialty crops, is the variability. So a little bit about what we've built. So I talked about the camera, and it's multispectral. It's really, really high resolution. It has RTK and GNSS capabilities, meaning that it can really precisely locate trees in itself on farms. And we designed it to be heat resistant, dust resistant. You can use it in the rain. It's really built for farm use. So I'm just gonna see if I can turn this into a little video here. So the other thing that we did is our camera is controlled by an app that can run on any mobile device. And we've worked really hard to make it simple for anybody to use this app. So, most of the time, and this was feedback from growers last year, was, I'll just pause for a second, is that oftentimes, if somebody's got this mounted on a tractor, they are way too busy to be operating one more thing. So what we've done is we've integrated our cameras with continuous scanning, power into the tractors, and now you can just hit anywhere on a screen and stop and start the device from scanning. Oops, sorry, I'm going to go back here for a sec. And once a scan is complete, this is an example that I'll show in apples. We can provide predictions immediately on the farm, as they're showing this little demo, and actually show per plant predictions. And in this case, what it's showing is counts of fruit on apple trees. And then for each scan, we're providing also an aggregated, the average count and the average size in that case. So we provide insights in the field. And then once those insights, or once the person who's operating the mobile device is anywhere near Wi-Fi, the data from the app automatically uploads into the cloud, where we provide a variety of analytics. So we try and take that data and make it into more digestible forms. So for growers, we're providing things like heat maps, so they can understand areas of low productivity and high productivity. We also have been working with researchers and growers in Canada, but in many of the states in the US, looking at things like a fruit growth rate model to predict how much fruit will set after a spray. We do yield prediction, where we provide size predictions starting now, what sizing we'll look at, like by harvest, by bins. So we have pack houses using that data to look at storage strategies, and marketers using it to communicate to retailers. So we work with today growers, packers, and marketers, and we're working with apples specifically, but starting to do some research into other crops, which I'll talk about. Our growers, I have to say, here's a couple of growers that we've been working with. One of my favorite things about this industry is how amazingly patient and supportive the growers are with new technology as it's being developed. I've worked in other industries, and that is not the case. So I think, despite being pretty early in technology, though this year things are much more advanced, which is nice, we've had support from day one, especially with Ontario apple growers. They've just always been in our corner. So I really just, we wouldn't be here without the grower support, which is, I think, really important to do. So a bit on pricing. So we charge for, in general, when people lease our system for the year, they'll lease a camera, and then we charge them a per acre fee, which covers the cost of all of our compute and running the algorithms and stuff like that. And then usually starting in July, we start to do some producers are interested just in understanding what is yield going to look like at this time of year, so they can plan their picking strategies, and also maybe communicate with their marketers. So starting in July, we start offering like a light, an actual physical service where we come and scan for growers. We do a few scans so they get a curve of what their yield will look like and sizing at this time of year. So I'll just kind of jump into some of the projects that we're excited about. So one of the projects we've been working with Penn State and the Provide Agro team. And Provide Agro took an HSS sprayer down, and there's an orange circle around our camera. And Penn State collected some data, and they're interested to see if our text maps with the that shows the variability of fruit on the trees could inform precision spraying. So they did a test, and actually I've got this video here. It's just great. So they did a test where they took a little bit and integrated it into kind of 3 bullets. So this is just a little video. They've just scanned a few rows, and that is the Agri Manager interface used by the HSS sprayers. Oops, sorry, I meant to keep sharing. Just have to escape the video. And what they were able to do, which is super exciting for us, is they had a control block, a block where they sprayed everything the same, and then a block where they used for variable rate map. And they were able to achieve their fruit count targets with 17% less spray using the variable rate, the map that we provided them for variable rate thinning. So this was still very researchy, but we're excited about continuing to work with Provide Agro, and we're starting to collaborate with HSS directly. They now have one of our cameras in the Netherlands, so that we can start to integrate this more tightly into variable rate sprayers to continue that project next year and hopefully offer the service commercially. We are excited about work that we're starting with Chuck and Curtis and the team, mounting one of our systems on the TED NIO, collecting grape data. So some of our objectives there are looking to build a data set for yield prediction, but also downy mildew detection and powdery mildew detection. And if we can do that, I think Chuck and his team have some pretty exciting work they're doing around innovative ways of treating those types of diseases. So scouting is one of the use cases that we're looking at. And we're also collaborating with the Vineland team, looking for fire blight in apples, with the concept being the same. Can we, using our multispectral capabilities, detect diseases earlier than a human could? And then, have more options around treatment. So the last project I'll talk about that I'm also excited about, and this is way more tactical. So this year we started predicting for tree volume as well as for fruit counts and fruit sizes. And some of the growers in Washington State use this for determining work rules. So before they were using sort of other metrics, but they want to understand, what is their target per tree and how are they tracking to that target? And then they give their workers rules based on, are they way above target? Are they at target or below target? They may have 2 or 3 sets of rules. And so we used our prediction data, so the kind of average predicted count per tree, and then the count target, and then using the tree volume, created an adjusted count target because a small tree may be able to support more or less fruit than a large tree, essentially, is the concept. And now we're able to provide them with heat maps that are delta to their target rather than just fruit counts to help with hand thinning. And then the other piece is we have using that data, being able to generate a metric around block variability, so that the growers know. So it's not just absolute numbers, but have some way of understanding how much variability is in their a given block. So, if they're close to target, do they have a ton of trees over and a ton of trees under, or is it like in general close to target so they can determine a little bit more around their labor strategies? So we're excited about that project also. I think lastly, I thought it might be interesting to talk a little bit about what it's been like building a company that is providing computer vision in agriculture. And some of the skills that we've had to develop and also hire for. So it's a really interesting combination of, half our team, a bit more than half is engineering. And then we also have the other side of the team that work with our customers. And the team that work with customers, come from the University of Guelph or Wazoo or Cornell and have ag backgrounds and ag focuses. And then the engineering team are, probably from either hardware companies or software companies and only know engineering. So we've been working really hard to cross-pollinate, between the two teams and help each group learn about the other. So we do a lot of field visits with our engineering teams. And then also our customer teams work very closely, bringing feedback to the technical team, sort of saying like, hey, you built this. It doesn't really work like that on a farm. Like this is what V-trellis actually looks like. It's not one tree it's not two trees in the row. It's one tree in the row. So that's been really quite interesting. And then building a team that has, because we have a physical hardware. So we need to be able to actually design and build the optics. Our system is patent pending, so it means we've designed it ourselves. It's not just an off-the-shelf camera, so it can do things that other cameras can't do out there. But we've had to, have skills like optics and industrial design, and then being able to write code to actually control the camera, and then all the software on it, and then of course all of the machine learning capabilities too. And I think a couple of the interesting things there are recruiting as a small company, a small company that is building really cool stuff. And the way we're able to bring in talent is to talk about how we are, really passionate about working with growers and solving something that we think is such a massive problem and, helping with farm profitability. And, part of our journey has been raising money, essentially, both from really supportive and amazing government groups, which we're so lucky to have in Canada, as well as from venture, which has been very interesting, raising money from companies when you have hardware in agriculture. So if anybody ever wants to talk about that journey, I'm happy to, or about building a team. And we're very proud of our team and the what we've accomplished to date. And it's just been an interesting journey. So, not building robots, thankfully, because that's a really, really, really hard problem, but building cameras for use with robots in other cases is what we've been up to. So that's what I wanted to share today. And I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Jenny. It's been a pleasure to work with you and follow the progress of your company over the last couple of years.
Nice. Yeah, we're excited. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions they'd like to send Jenny's way?
And I can put up my contact info. I think I've got one more slide here, just if anybody wants to connect after the fact. Just put that up so that my QR code is visible. The QR code just links to my contact info. So I can leave that up for a minute.
Excellent, thank you.
Cool. Thanks so much for having me.
Sorry, quick question. Sorry, I'm just.
Oh, sorry, Evan, you were.
Yep, no problem. I was just plugging in my stuff here, and I just had a quick question. Thanks for the presentation. I'm curious about where you're finding the most uptake, because I know obviously we're fortunate to have this AgRobotics working group, and it's great to reconvene on a regular basis and stay up to date. So you feel like there's all kinds of awesome activity in the sector here, but where are you finding the most uptake and curiosity about your work? Is it in Ontario, or are there other areas that you're really finding there's a pull?
Yeah, for us, because we're in apples, like right now is our beachhead market, I would actually say it's global because we get inbounds all the time from Washington State, or like I had a conversation with somebody yesterday in Peaches, and Spain, New Zealand. I think what I say to the team is it's kind of early adopters globally. So the people willing to tolerate technology that is not, maybe it's not quite that easy to use yet, or the value isn't, people are still discovering, how do I, really get my return on investment with this? So I think globally there's a huge appetite for vision and robotics in specialty crops, especially because they're so expensive. But it's still early in terms of the technology. So, the pool of people are the ones that understand that it's going to take time.
And do you find that those people are, maybe other people on this call will have encountered this as well, but most of the time people are looking for they're pitching you on a pilot project, right? Like, let's test this out. I don't necessarily want to pay at the moment, but can we just get your stuff out here and integrate it and let's see what happens, and then maybe we'll consider it. How do you deal with that? I can only imagine from your laughter that that is common. And I
Yeah.
wondered, other people are probably nodding their heads if they had their cameras on, but I wondered, do you find that that's true, and how do you navigate that? Like, do you just set up front, this is a fee for service, or do you need those pilots? Like, what's your opinion at the moment?
Yeah, we kind of classify our work into two buckets. One is commercial activities where we have a product already, like apples. And then the other is research activities. For example, talking to the people that we're talking to in stone fruit in California, where we know we can't deliver any value yet. We have no data, we have no anything we can do. So for them, we're like, great, we'd love to do a pilot because your data will help build our product. So there's still an exchange of value, and the feedback and stuff. So we look at it as investment into a market. And then, but if it's in apples, we're like, sorry, like, we've got a commercial product there. I think the hardest thing is figuring out where to say no. Um, so, there's some projects that we get in, okay, like the marijuana people call all the time. And we're just like, there's a ton of money there, but our focus is food. So, we've sort of said, like, we're a team of 15 building hard, like it's not big for what we're doing. So we've had to really put constraints on, based on the vision of the company, here's what we do, and here's everything else that we're going to say no to. But it always has to meet, like, there has to be skin in the game for us too.
Yep. No, that's really helpful. Thanks.
Fun fact, Evan and I went to high school together.
Yeah, although it wouldn't look like it. I look like maybe I was there 20 years before you, but
Uh, are there any regulatory challenges you've kind of run into? We work in other spaces with products because they're on the kind of life side, like fertilizers and animal feeds, where they're tightly regulated. But I'm just wondering whether there's anything like that you've run into.
Not yet, though. So regulation, because we don't touch the crops, we're scanning, not yet, but our latest camera has laser capabilities, which sounds really funny when I say it out loud. So I think we'll have to look at certification type things before we do that. But regulation, thankfully, and I know that can make things really difficult, is not something that we've had to deal with.
And on the data sort of ownership side, you're taking images and scanning to sort of build your capabilities. Do the producers have any concerns about that?
So I come from a world of media where it just, like, I was very disillusioned with how data was treated. So from day one, our contracts give the grower, whoever we're scanning for, it's their data. It's not necessarily accessible. They can get the predictions, not necessarily the raw data, but they understand that we're using it to make their predictions better. So we do ultimately say, like, if you stop working with us, we can get rid of your data out of our data set. And, ultimately in the contracts, they own the data set.
It looks like there's a question from Izmir, if you want to go ahead.
Yes, good morning, Jenny. Thank you for the presentation. So I know you are coming to Quebec next month. So I wonder if you are showcasing the sprayer integration that day.
No, we're just, I think with Robert and les producteurs de pommes de Québec, it's been mostly about scanning for thinning,
All right.
chemical and hand thinning. So we can talk about it, but we didn't have plans. Like so far, we integrated into other people. Provide Agro provided the sprayer, so we don't have a sprayer that we could bring. I mean, we could try something if you have one available, but I just don't know whether we could get it to.
No. But I think it will be important to talk about it. And my other question is, the disease treatment is just available in one production?
We're in the research stages right now. So Vineland is kindly inducing some fire blight for us to see, so that we don't have to, we know growers don't want to see it. So once back to that data set, we haven't seen enough of it to build an algorithm yet. So we're trying to get that data set so that we can start predicting for that soon. I don't have an answer as to when, because it'll just depend on whether, how much fire blight we get to see, and whether it's enough to train a model.
All right. Thank you.
Cool. Well, thank you, everyone. And please do feel free to reach out with any other questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jenny. Appreciate that. Great presentation. And thank you, everybody, for your great questions. All right. So moving on, we'll head into conferences, meetings, field tours, and demos. Yesterday was the OMAFRA Research and Action webinar series. I know there are a few people here who were in attendance, a couple who presented. Didn't know if anybody wanted to speak on that and their impressions.
Mary Ruth's presentation is excellent. I was reviewing that this morning.
Excellent. Yeah, it was definitely very informative. It was great to watch, and Jason as well.
And you didn't do a bad job at all, giving the background to the working group since you've only been here for 2 months. So congratulations.
Oh,
There was a great presentation also from Brian about the a cucumber harvester that they've been building and working on. And yeah, it was a good overall event. And you did have our assistant deputy minister attend for most of it. So that's important because he's the signatory to the TPA.
excellent. And once we get the links for that, we'll post it so that if anyone who missed it can go back and watch that. As everybody knows or probably knows by this point, we have our demo days coming up. First one, July 4th, Bradford next week, and then the next one on July 11th. At the moment, attendance is looking very good. We have 71 tickets sold for the Muck Station, and we have 102 sold at the moment for Simcoe. So it's looking like it's going to be a really good turnout. Really excited for that.
Can I just make a comment? Yeah, thanks to everyone for trying to get the dignitaries there. It looks like people are rearranging their schedules so they can make it. So we're gonna have to make sure we're on point with that kind of thing and prepared with opportunities for them to speak. So we can talk about that on Tuesday.
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
Project updates. We, as of this morning, seems like there's still a little bit of rockiness since we've integrated into the new CRM system with the new meeting invite and everything. At the top of the weekly email, there is a section with links, and one of them is add to calendar. You can click that and download the recurring calendar invite meeting, and you can add it in to your calendar. So please do check that out so that we can get that so it's always there, always a reminder. If there are issues, let us know. We can work on it. But yeah, so for now, that's where we are with that. Funding announcements and opportunities. We don't have any new ones as of this week, but I have gone through and I've started adding the dates for applications to those. Just makes it a little easier, I think, to sort of see like timeline wise where all those lie. So as we add new ones, we'll do that going forward, just so it's a lot easier to see. Don't have to go into the link and search for it to figure that out. At this point, I'd like to open it up to the round table. If there's anything that anybody wants to discuss or bring up. Chuck, go ahead.
So on Wednesday, several of us, Dan, you were there too. We went to Sandy Shore Farms, and Triton Innovation did a demonstration with their asparagus harvester unit. And we realized asparagus is nearly done, but they were able to run the machine. And Dan was there from Vineland as well. Got a pretty decent turnout. I would say there was, what do you think, Dan? Was there like 30 to 40 people?
Probably about that, probably closer to 40.
Yeah, and which is good for a small industry. And I was able to climb inside the machine and watch it cutting the asparagus off and stacking it into the bin. And so that's quite an achievement, especially because when you think about the robotic arm that is grabbing the asparagus, cutting it, and picking it up, remember the machine is moving at the same time. So all this has to occur while the arm and the entire unit is in motion. And they had cycle speeds of 0.6 seconds per cut, which is very, very fast. And that actually competes with a human worker. And it's quite nice. We just missed the rain. There's a nice deluge went through right immediately afterwards, and none of us got wet, so that was a bonus. There's some really good comments and feedback as well in the presentation session at the end. There was a grower there from Michigan. Another grower from the United States was also in attendance, and I'm not sure if anybody but the Dan Bath or anyone else wants to add any comments to this.
Sure, I'll chime in and maybe mention some of the great discussion that the group had afterward, talking about not only how close the technology is to commercialization and the great trajectory they had, but also some of the great opportunities that are kind of obvious next steps. I think, especially in terms of doing the work of getting a robot to pick the cucumber, you've also got all the information that's needed there for grading as well. So there's an obvious value add that would be a small, relatively small effort for them that brings a huge value to the device going forward.
Well, I think for those of you who haven't seen it, probably one of the biggest differences with this machine is that because it's using a robotic arm and not using a gantry style, mechanism for moving, the form factor of that robot, it can accommodate it to other crops. And that's, there's a lot of clearance that exists, around that robotic arm. So if they wanted to use it with broccoli, which I think is their next target, or other crops, they might be able to, and which is nice to see. And then like Dan talked about, what that was actually probably the biggest value add piece was the grading potential for grading the asparagus at the same time. And the robot has the ability that the belt that they lay the asparagus on is wide enough that the different grades of asparagus can be laid on the belt in different places, which carries it to the back, and then it gets sorted. You know, which bin does it dump into? And they think they can sort up to 4 grades with that machine right on the machine itself, which is pretty interesting.
The grower mentioned they have 11 grades of asparagus. Is that typical for holy smokes?
What were some of the other comments from the growers that were there? What did they think?
Some of the concerns that they had was damaging other spheres. You know, if the robot was going along, you know, does it damage anything else? There were some concerns about weed pressure. The fields that the robot has been running in are very, very clean. And so what is the impact of a weed going to have? They were worried about the odd drop, you know, when the robot didn't actually would drop the actual lug. There's concerns about that. And the obvious concern is, you know, who wants to have the first one, right? And do, you know, that's always a concern with any new technology is, do I want version 0.9 or do I want version 3? And somebody has to buy version 0.9 for this technology to succeed. And there's always that wariness. The other concerns are about the asparagus industry as a whole and how stable is that industry financially. And I think that's another, that's always a question about, you know, is there, you know, do the economics exist to even stay in the business in the first place? And that's a very big concern.
Another interesting point, I think, from the discussion, it kind of just touched on, but it'd be interesting to see what the impact of robotics might have on the way that asparagus is planted, actually. So we talked about sort of accommodating in end rows for machines to turn around and so on. But it also has me wondering how much of the current conventional asparagus planting methods are there to accommodate human pickers, right? So if you don't need to leave foot space for pickers, can you actually increase the planting density and have wider swath rows for a robot to pick from, that sort of thing, which could be complicated with asparagus because they're such a long-term crop. But I think that's a really good example of how robotics can actually change the face of agricultural techniques. And that poor guy who grows white asparagus, I'm not sure it was, and I think he came all the way down from Quebec, and I don't think it's really suited to white asparagus. But
What are you gonna do? Perfect.
anybody have ideas how to raise the white asparagus market in Ontario? I absolutely love it, but you can't even find it here.
One of my employees grows it, and he's from Holland originally. And I guess in Holland and Germany, apparently it's more popular, but it is very labor intensive.
I've seen there are some automated harvest machines for white asparagus, but it's a totally different technique.
Yeah, he looked at bringing one over, like a used one over from Holland, but he hasn't brought it over yet.
Perfect. Thanks very much, everybody. Anything else anyone would like to discuss? Question? Query?
I'll just bring it up really quick. There was a question on how many growers will be attending, and I'm just going through the Excel sheets really quickly, and it looks like there was 28 for Simcoe and 42 for the muck station, but I don't think the muck station's accurate because it looks like there's been some people that double booked on that, so we'll go through and double check that. But I wouldn't be surprised if there is some drop-ins that are unregistered as well, but we'll see how that goes.
I do see that, Maxime, you're on the call today, and you sent out an email about the collaboration between Ontario and Quebec. And I didn't know if we have some time if we wanted to discuss that now or.
Yes, I was wondering if you guys had got it, but people from Quebec are really open to build a collaboration. So basically, we have to agree on a common program. Another idea came up yesterday, actually, would be to design decision trees for growers for each technologies that will be tested as part of Quebec's strategy for accelerating the adoption of innovation. So we're open to discuss when you guys are.
I did get the email involving seeing I just haven't dealt with it yet. So, but yeah, we're interested in collaborating as a group and trying to figure out what that is. The idea of the decision tree is not a bad one, and that has come up as well. How do we? And this gets into how do we sort and identify the technology? Like, how do you group it? And because one of the challenges with robotics and automation is even the definition of what that means, and where do you even begin? I was on a conference call. Farm Credit Canada did an event yesterday, and where they surveyed, and they had 2,000 growers answer a survey, which is a very large success rate for a survey. And it was all around technology adoption and what the barriers are. And some of the barriers that farmers talk about is, I didn't know that was available for my farm, or what technology should I even look at for my farm? So that's a nice lead in to what you're talking about. If I'm a greenhouse producer, or if I'm a lettuce producer or an onion producer or a corn farmer, whatever I am, I'm so busy with my day-to-day activities that I don't have time to sit there and spend 3 hours a night scouring the internet looking for a new technology that may or may not help my farm. And instead, I'm inundated with advertising of stuff that's going to make my sandwiches for me and not really solve any problems. And so I think that approach is not only a very good one, but I think based on those survey results, it's something that farmers are asking for.
Yeah,
I could also.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I would like only to add that I had a chance to discuss with the Deputy Minister from AAFC, Ben Rosser, so he knows that we're discussing.
Oh, we've been having questions within OMAFRA as well about where this is at and what's happening. So there is interest from Agriculture Canada for this to come together. It's a really busy time of year, though, for everybody.
Indeed.
So maybe what I could suggest would be that we put some meetings in the calendar starting in September, and really have a bunch of meetings scheduled consecutively so that we could quickly put it together, because both provinces are really going to need to participate in what the performance measures look like, what all of these key pieces look like going forward. So we don't want to miss out on this opportunity, but we want to, I think that probably will work best for everyone, but I'm not sure if anybody else wants to speak up about that. So Aaron and Dan, put that on your radar that we should really start to, like, you can even put meetings in calendars now, or send out a poll to see what will work for people going forward. It's not it's kind of a lengthy process.
Yes.
Okay, so it will take a lot of it will take time and it will take attention to detail. And I just feel like if you have meetings that are kind of consecutive, you don't kind of lose where you were before, so that the process can get completed quicker.
Makes sense.
Yep. And that's something we can definitely start working towards as well.
I'll forward you the email so you're aware of. I'm not sure if you were on the email, Aaron.
Yep, I was
You
on it.
were. Okay,
Yep.
perfect.
Yep.
And Chuck, and Mary Ruth, I passed on something to you that was asked of me from BC. They're looking for a few growers to do podcasts that have actually used the NIOAs or other weeding, who would be willing to do a podcast about their experience.
Excellent. Thanks very much, everybody. We've just got a few minutes left, so I'll just point out a couple of quick, interesting things in the articles. We got a few different watch lists for different technologies in berries, apples, as well as market gardening. They are in French, so might be something you need to get translated, but there's a lot of really good info in there. Also, the 2024 Ontario Agritech Pitch Competition from June 20th. The recording is now available. That is also linked in the articles. It's about an hour and 40 minutes long, but it's got some interesting stuff on there. As well as there's a few just sort of general news articles that are pretty interesting just to, keep up on what's going on. And I think that brings the meeting to a close, unless there's anything last minute that anybody has. No? All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Much appreciated. Have a great long Canada Day weekend. And we'll see you all next week.
Bye.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Have a good weekend.